السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستهديه ونسترشده ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. أيها الأخوة الكرام، أوصيكم وأوصي نفسي بتقوى الله، فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه العزيز: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. أما بعد. The purpose of a Friday sermon is really to touch on issues and topics that are relevant, to act as a reminder to us all, and to increase awareness on issues that is of relevance to you as an individual, but to us as a whole as well. So in that light, I wanted to address a topic that perhaps you may have heard of, you may not have heard of, feel that this is relevant to. It's quite a big issue. So being from a medical background, then this is something that I'm particularly aware of. So if you're from that background, it's something that you may be aware of. But actually, it's something that affects all of us. And that issue is something called physician-assisted suicide. Now, this is an issue that I wanted to raise today because actually I don't think it's something that has the awareness around it from the Muslim community that it deserves, while simultaneously there are big movements in society now to try and change the law around it. And so as a result of that, it's very important for us to increase awareness of the issue, to make us all aware of the implications of it, and for us to become, as a unit, more cognizant of why it's something that we should be actively campaigning against. That said, I know that there are many other issues that can be discussed. SubhanAllah, there's in Libya, at least 7,000 have passed away from what's happened. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give patience to those who've lost loved ones, for those who've lost their lives to elevate them, to increase their rank, to give them a high station in Jannah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help the society there rebuild everything that was destroyed. Similarly in Morocco, subhanAllah, again, Many people have lost their lives, and it's something we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to really help those who have suffered. And it's just a sign of the end of time that we're facing all these disasters, all of these difficulties, tribulations, that actually the time is coming closer and closer. So this is not the time to be relaxing, watching TV, switching on Netflix, lifting up your legs on the sofa, having the popcorn, enjoying the movies. Now's the time to be doing something so that you're increasing your rank in the hereafter. So let's go to our topic today, physician-assisted suicide. Why is it something that we should be campaigning actively against? Why is it something that we should, it's something that really we shouldn't be entertaining as a society? And what kind of implications does it have? Essentially what this is there is a movement to legalize a doctor to help a patient take their own life at the end of their life. It's usually somebody who's at the end of their life. They have maybe quite significant cancer, end-stage cancer. They're in a lot of pain. They're suffering a lot. They have to have somebody help change them, clean them, wash them. They can't move in their bed, so they develop pressure sores. So sometimes the sores are so deep you can see the bone. So it's not something that is light. It's not something that we take light, but also it's not something that is something that's extremely serious. It concerns individuals who are extremely serious. So why is it wrong for us to change the law and allow for doctors to help patients end their lives, help patients commit suicide? At the moment, in this country, it's illegal. So patients travel maybe to a jurisdiction where it's legalized. So for example, they may go to Switzerland, parts of America, etc., where it's legalized, and they go to a hospital-based setting or a hospice-based setting, a community setting, and they are given medications, and they either are administered the medication or they press the button to give them the medication which takes their life, ends their life. So there are many reasons really that we can many reasons that we can say why it's something that is wrong, and there are many reasons why people would say actually no, it's something that is actually we should change the law and allow patients to do. So what I want to do is just rationalize for you from an Islamic perspective, but also just from a broader secular perspective, why it's wrong ultimately for us to change the law. The first thing to say is that inherently there is value in human life. Whether you're Muslim or not, that stands. That there is value, there is dignity in human life. As a Muslim, we would say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, that we have ennobled the son of Adam. That we've ennobled the son of Adam. They have a dignity about them. But even if you weren't Muslim, the life of a human being has something special about it when you compare it to other life forms. So for example, tonight, you're probably going to have chicken biryani and eat a chicken. Okay, you have allowed for, sanctioned the killing of a chicken so that you can have some biryani. You don't consider that the same as having, instead of chicken biryani, a human biryani. There's something about being human that makes it special, makes him or her special. There is a sanctity, there is a dignity associated with simply being human being. And many reasons, many people argue from a religious perspective and a non-religious perspective, a secular perspective, as to why that dignity exists. From a Muslim, we would say that there is the existence of the soul, that the soul within the human being gives that person an existence that elevates them above an animal. But even from a secular perspective, there are rights, there are morals, there is an agency, there is a higher ability, there is an ability within the human being to think and be beyond what an animal does. An animal has animal instincts. If an animal kills another animal, you won't punish that animal for killing the animal. So for example, some crocodiles, they bite off the legs and cut off the legs of other crocodiles. You don't go to the first crocodile and say, oh, you've cut his leg off, so let's cut your leg off. You don't treat that animal in the same way as you would a human being if they act on their instincts. If a human has an instinct to kill another human, there is a law, there is something to say that that's wrong. So inherently, within the nature of the human being, there is something special about them. That we can't just say that they are simply things that we can begin and end as we please. That's why, for example, we even consider beings that potentially can be human to have a certain sanctity about them. That's why in this country, abortion is outlawed unless under certain circumstances, particularly after a certain time period, after 24 weeks. So the potential of this existence to be a human gives it sanctity. So you can't just terminate that life as and when you please. So there is something inherent about being a human being that makes them sanctified. So in order for us to overcome or reverse that sanctity, there has to be a good reason. There has to be a good reason. So what some people would say is actually, yes, that here we do have a good reason. And that reason is that there is complete loss of dignity. In other words, somebody is having to have their private parts wiped, they're vomiting everywhere, they can't clean themselves, they can't live a life that they want to live. Which we all as we all sympathize with that. We never want to belittle that. We never want to say that that's something that we don't sympathize with. We are caring towards each other. But that is not enough to necessarily reverse the sanctity placed within a human being. There are other ways that we can search and find ways to overcome the loss of this dignity, this extreme pain. Pain is extreme pain. Sometimes we use very powerful medications, it just don't work. So you can give morphine to somebody who's dying, and sometimes it just doesn't work. It works a lot of the time, but sometimes it doesn't work. But then that takes us to the second point. And that second point, again, it's not a religiously centered second point, but it's an important second point to say that actually there are alternatives to helping individuals commit suicide at the end of life. And that alternative is palliative care. In other words, what we're saying is that we shouldn't be investing our time in helping patients commit suicide. We should be investing our time and money and efforts into further developing palliation, medications. I mean, there's a lot of really good medications that exist. If you get it right, you get it right. And you can get it right. But there's a lot of medications that exist, that can work, that can do their job very well. And we just don't place the effort, the time, the money into those different things. So there is something else that exists. And you can effectively treat pain, you can effectively treat sickness, you can effectively treat constipation, etc., at the end of life if you do it right. You have to have the expertise, you have to have the etc., and you can do it right. So just for the benefit of those people who are coming late, today's topic is discussing an issue that is important as a society for us to address. It's not very well known about, but there are big campaigns to actively try and change the law in this regard, and that's physician-assisted suicide. So if you're coming in late, that's what we're talking about today. The other thing that we must bear in mind, so another reason that we must bear in mind is that as Muslims, ultimately we view, our worldview is very different to maybe how our non-Muslim friends view things, view life events. As a Muslim, we know that where there is difficulty, there is ease. And it's not just one ease. For every difficulty, فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. Inna ma'al usri yusra. So think about the ayah. Al-usr. Al-usr is a definite word. You're saying the difficulty. With the difficulty is an ease. And with the same difficulty is another ease. That's what the verses mean. فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرَ آخَرَ. So our worldview of pain, hardship, difficulty. Yes, there's a human element to it. It's difficult, it's tough. No one's saying it's easy, it's going to be a breeze, it's going to be comfortable. But with that, difficulty is ease. Whether you see it in this world or whether you see it in the next, there is a promised ease. So when you have somebody at the end of life who is suffering, who's in a lot of pain, who can't control their bowel movements, etc., when you see them, you know that with that, there will be great reward. And that, as a Muslim, we know that's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That ultimately is a test from God. That when you find yourself in difficulty, the last thing you should do is despair. The last thing you should do is complain. Complain to Allah, yes. Talk to Allah, yes. But to walk away from the one who's testing you is not an acknowledgement of the test. So ultimately, have faith in the one, have trust in the decree of the one who is putting you through the test. That when you're going through this, inshallah, there will be great reward at the end of it. Even in this world, maybe there'll be a time when Allah will lift that suffering, that difficulty from you. But there is ease. You will see ease. Allah on the Day of Judgment will elevate you because of what you used to say, the patience you used to have, the dhikr, the remembrance of God that you used to have whilst suffering. And because of that, He elevates you and makes you amongst and gives you a place in and amongst the prophets and the Sahaba in Jannah and gives you whatever you want. You'll be able to gaze at His glorious face because of the patience that you had. So what kind of trade-off is that? There is no comparison. You're comparing momentary pain and suffering with infinite happiness, tranquility, ease. There is no comparison. So as Muslims, we know that with this suffering, there is ease. So let me remind you, there is sanctity in the nature of the human being, such that we can't just reverse that sanctity or break that sanctity. There are alternatives. We must trust in the decree of Allah. And then the other thing, and probably the final thing that I'm going to mention, it's such a long debate and you can't condense it in 20 minutes, but probably one of the strongest arguments that you have is the potentiality of quite severe misuse of this whole process. It will be impossible for you to really know the intentions of the person making the request to have their life terminated early. It will be impossible. How do you know that the person who is asking for their life to be terminated early is not doing so because they feel that they're a burden on their family? How do you know? They'll say to you, no, I'm doing it because of my reasons, my choice, I want to do it free will. Okay, they say that. But how do you know that deep inside, they absolutely hate it, the fact that their wife is having to get up every morning and clean them, or that their daughter is having to give up her job to look after them? People feel naturally, they feel absolutely awful to put their family in that situation. So how do you know that really the reason, the ultimate reason that the person is making their choice, not because of this? It will be impossible to know. And where that really matters is where you have vulnerable patients. Can I just ask you to squeeze together, please? So there's a lot of gaps. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, it's a good thing, but we're getting full. So if you can squeeze gaps, get close to the shoulders, inshallah. So where this really matters is vulnerable patients. People who have their dependence, their ability to eat, drink, stay clean, you name it. Their ability to do all these things depends on somebody else. So they have carers, whether it's their family, whether it's somebody outside their family. Their ability to do these things is dependent on other people. To live, their ability to live is dependent on other people. And live with dignity, live with comfort is dependent on other people. These people are vulnerable. They're naturally vulnerable. One little sigh from their carer, you've sold yourself again. I just cleaned you 10 minutes ago. One sigh, one nudge, even if it's as little as that, can push them towards making a decision that they don't not doing for themselves, but they're doing because they don't want to be a burden from somebody else. As a society, we have to protect these people. And ultimately, it's perhaps the strongest argument from a secular point of view as to why it would be wrong to legalize assisted suicide. But ultimately, that's the strongest reason. We have a duty to the vulnerable members of our society. That's why, if you ask physicians, doctors, if you go to a GP, every year they have to have a review with their learning disabilities patients. Every year, they have to ask them, do you go to a dentist, do you go to an optician, etc. Why do they do that? Because these people don't normally always think about going to do that. If someone's got a learning disability, they don't necessarily say, okay, I need to they might find it difficult to make appointments to see a dentist every so often. And so they have to have somebody to encourage them. So the GP has to ask them, have you seen them? Have you gone to get your eyes checked? Have you done this? Have you done that? So they have to check up on them. So similarly, these vulnerable people as a society, we have to look after them. And if we put them into more danger or at risk of being manipulated at greater risk of being manipulated, then we're not protecting them. We're not doing enough. So those safeguards have to exist because there's no other ways that we can guarantee those safeguards. And that trumps your right to choose how you want to die. Your right, this is how the arguments go. Your right to choose how to die, your right to dignity. Yes, they're important. Nobody's saying that your right to autonomy is not right. You shouldn't live the life that you want to live. But there are priorities, and sometimes some things are more important. And that's why laws exist. I can't go out into a cinema and shout fire as a joke. You can't do that. It's outlawed. You can't just pretend and cause havoc and mayhem just like you want to, even though you may want to shout fire in the middle of a cinema, but you can't do that. So just because you want to do something, it doesn't mean that it's okay to do something. And so that applies in this situation as well. So it's very brief discussion, summary of the salient points when it comes to something like physician-assisted suicide. It's not a topic necessarily that it's at the forefront of your mind, but if we don't talk about it in situations like this, then we'll continue to be unaware of the kind of changes that are going on. If you research more into it, you will find that there are campaigns, quite strong campaigns, trying to reverse the law around it. But you really have to be aware of what's going on, mindful of what's going on, and then put the effort to try and actually say, no, some things are just wrong because they're wrong. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستهديه ونسترشده ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات المسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها فنعم المولى ونعم المصير. It's important for us to make dua for those who came in late, make dua for those who have lost loved ones, who are suffering, particularly from natural disasters like what's happened in Morocco, what's happened in Libya. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to lift the plight of those who have suffered, whether it's in Libya from the flood that has happened there. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do the same for our brothers and sisters in Morocco, in wherever they may be in the world, whether it's in the Middle East, in Pakistan, in the West, wherever. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to lift that plight off those individuals, to elevate the ranks of those who have lost their lives. to grant them forgiveness in this world and the next, to give patience to their family and allow them to overcome the struggles that they're overcoming. Everybody here has their own personal issues. I'm sure there are people in here who are carers themselves, looking after people who are at the end of life. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you all patience through this difficult time and to allow to allow greater reward and happiness for those who have loved ones, for their loved ones to be rewarded and elevated in the hereafter. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله